Happy Sunday, Syndicate members. I'm here with Trevor. For those of you that are fairly new to the group, Trevor is our sort of resident mixing and mastering guru. He's been mixing and mastering specifically for the TV film industry for basically around 10 years. So he's a veteran. He's been in the business for a long time. Definitely has been around the block, understands the business, understands the music side of the business, and also understands a lot about the business side of the business. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today. Trevor is also a composer himself, and he recently, in the last couple of weeks, maybe longer than a couple of weeks, he's been involved in a custom gig that's turned out to be kind of a nightmare. He's had a lot of people, sort of too many chefs in the kitchen is kind of what's been going on. He's getting a lot of pushback, a lot of feedback, and I think he's wrapped it up now. I think everything's good, right?
Yeah, it's done deal.
It's all good now, but for a couple of weeks there, he was just in revision hell and in custom queue hell and just dealing with a lot of issues and problems. And he's not alone in that, because I've dealt with a lot of people who've given me a lot of headaches as well. Because I think the number one issue is kind of, I think what Trevor is going to get into is having too many people that are sort of giving you feedback. And so you're kind of trying to blend and balance. Well, this person has this opinion and what's their real power in the situation. But then the supervisor has this point of view, but are they really the one paying me? Do I really need to listen to them? So there's all of these other people talking. And the big issue is that a lot of people who are involved in this business actually are not musicians or producers themselves. So they're giving you feedback that's either really vague or has nothing to do with music. And in their head, it makes sense, but they don't really understand that they need to be a little bit more, they need to provide examples or references or just kind of be a little bit clearer and explain themselves fuller. But sometimes you don't get that. You'll just get a one sentence or a one word, as Trevor got in some of his feedback. And it's super frustrating because you do your best to interpret it and you try to get some clarification. And sometimes you just work with whatever you got. So in this chat, Trevor's going to kind of talk to us a little bit about his gig, what was going on with it. And maybe we can kind of tie together some lessons for all of us to learn moving forward. Some things that we can do to maybe try to prevent some of these issues as much as possible. Some of them you probably can't, but a lot of them maybe we can. And so we can just definitely learn from each other's experiences. That's what this group's really all about. So Trevor, walk us through it. What happened, man?
Okay, so imagine you're doing the same thing, or imagine what you're doing for Jesse right now, right? Or imagine you're pitching songs to the catalog, but imagine that 4 people have to say yes.
It's hard enough for just me saying yes.
Yeah. So that's essentially, in a lot of ways, what custom projects are. Is there's multiple people involved in making a decision. I mean, I've been in situations where it's a room full of people, it's like 8 people that have to decide whether or not the song is done and ready to be put into the project. For the thing that I was working on, you essentially had the director of the spot, the music supervisor, the what would be the person's label? For a while, there was a lawyer in there, basically keeping track of everything and making sure that there wasn't anything happening for them to get sued, like copyright stuff or whatever. Which really, that wasn't even what he was doing. He was just kind of giving opinion on music too, which was making it all confusing. And then there was the music representative person, which was basically my contact, and then me. So it went me, music rep, lawyer, music supervisor, director, and all of these people are all over the country. So most of this was done through email. Here's an audio file. Here's this, here's that, all the way through. Oh, here's my opinion. Here's my opinion. Okay, let's all get on a conference call and I don't know if how many of you, when you were in school, you played that game Telephone, where in like middle school or elementary school or whatever, all the kids would sit in a circle and one person would say something, they'd whisper it to the next person and they'd go around and around and around. And by the time it got back to the first person, it was a different phrase. Like if you said, I like potatoes, and then it comes around and it says like the sky writes something, right? Whatever. It's essentially that kind of game in this, where you're working on something and then one of those 4 people says something, but then another one of those 4 people says something contradictory. And as the composer, you're stuck trying to figure out what all of that means. And so in this project, it was kind of a nightmare because of the fact that there were so many contradictory statements, but also so many people trying to assert dominance, where you were kind of sitting around. I was in a position where I kind of had to pick a side to these arguments, and it was starting to upset other people. where I would agree with one person and the other person would be like, well, why didn't you agree with me? And so on and so forth. And there's just, it's one of those, it's very frustrating. And it's something that even with all of the experience that I have, it's a very hard task to try and figure out what they want. Funny enough, everything that I like, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but all of my ideas ended up being what the director wanted.
Oh, of course.
It was funny too, because I remember like all of these other people involved all have huge resumes, right? And they've been doing this for a long time, longer than me. They're like double my age, so I'm coming in and it's like, who, why should I come in and assert myself? All these people have, so I come in and I'm like, okay, like you're the professional, you've been doing this for twice as long as me as a, music supervisor or whatever, okay, I'll take what you say and I'll do it. Even though in my mind, I'm like, well, the director said this one thing. I actually think that's different, but this guy's the professional, this guy's been doing it for an extra 10 years longer than I have. So cool. Well, that kind of ended up biting me in the butt a little bit, because I did that a couple times throughout this process where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna defer to what you're saying, and it got us nowhere, wasted us a lot of time. And then I was like, okay, I would like, and this is just because it was taking so long, I guess I kind of was allowed this like opportunity, and most of the time they probably won't let you do this. I asked if we could all be in the conference calls together, because they were getting frustrated, I was getting frustrated, and everybody in the thing was getting frustrated. And then the owner of the spot, like the brand, right? The brand was getting frustrated because they wanted to release these commercials soon, and we were all bickering, right? So I essentially just kind of played like, let's all just come to a phone call and get a consensus. But really, at the end of the day, the director was making the final call, and I didn't realize that. And the moment I did realize that, I kind of ignored everybody else and listened to what the director said, and it was actually really clear. And so once that was another issue that I think for me, I wasted a little too much time thinking that I needed a yes from everybody, when really I only needed a yes from the director. And I didn't realize that until it was like, a long time into this situation. So once I kind of got the notes, because like I did version after version after version, and she had this, like, I like this version and this version for this commercial and this for this. And then there were these like kind of abstract notes that she wasn't a music person, but she kind of understood what she was trying to say. So I had to decipher that. But once I did that, I just kind of ignored all of the clutter from everybody else. And then once I did that, it was done like really fast. And the way that I kind of had to combat that is I basically told the other people I'll do their idea, but first I'm going to do this. So I said, okay, I think the director is saying this, this, and this. So I'm going to do that. And while I'm waiting for approval, I'm going to do what you're saying. So I did this, this, and that, sent it to the director. And 5 minutes into doing the other stuff that all these other people wanted me to do, the director was like, no, I think we're done. And this is kind of the mess of the situation, because you have different power structures and different people who, like, you can't just come in right away and say like, nope, I want to talk to the director, I want to ignore you, music supervisor. Right. Like, then they're never going to work with you again, because they think that they know what's best. Everybody thinks that they know what's best in the situation. And in this situation, like I could have been completely wrong, but it's one of those situations. It was about a month of like hair pulling, of things that are really inconvenient, like what was like 10 o'clock at night, getting a call like, hey, can you in an hour change this one thing? Or, I know it's not your job, but I'm sending you, this is another one. I know it's not your job, but I'm sending you the sound effects. Can you put the sound effects in the commercial as well, so that I can hear it with the music? Like that kind of stuff, even though they're supposed to pay somebody else to do that later. Like all that kind of stuff just happens. And you kind of have to you're kind of faced with the thing. Do you want to do this again? Is question number one. Once you're done with this project, do you want to deal with this kind of stuff again? Or do you just go, okay, this isn't for me to deal with all this stuff? And for me, I at the end of the day, I didn't hate it too much. But for one, I liked a bunch of the spots, like musically. They ended up coming out really good. I enjoyed them. The money obviously was pretty good. So there's that always like going. okay, just deal with the headache, then you'll get the paycheck. There's that too. And learning everything that I've learned, I feel like the next time around I'll do better. I'll understand the situation a little better. I'll be able to, because I've done this stuff, but not nearly as much as like other stuff. So I've just kind of learning this stuff too, this commercial type custom stuff. And so while it was frustrating, it was a month of kind of really awkward situations and stuff. I feel like it was worth it. And if it is, then you just kind of take it and learn from it. And that's kind of what I did. Is as I was going, I was learning from it too. But now the next time around, I'm not like, oh man, another month of hair pulling. It's more like, okay, I think I'm a little bit more versed in this. It won't be as bad, but like I can still handle it. And and it'll help, and for your career too, like you're just gonna have to and I don't mean to be like absolutist, but you're gonna have to deal with that stuff, especially in custom stuff, especially working with people who do like advertising, commercials, that kind of stuff. You're gonna have to deal with like a bunch of cooks in the kitchen, and it is the way it is. And you just gotta kind of learn and hope that you can, deal with it and then enjoy it at the end, because at the end, like there was a lot of hair pulling, but I also enjoyed the music that got put into the spots. So
yeah, absolutely, man. That's interesting. So you finally found out that it was really the director who was sort of the person you really needed to get the approval from. When you first got pulled onto the gig, who hired you? Meaning, like when you get your, you don't need to discuss the details, but if you were going to get like a check, an upfront sync fee, or if you signed a contract, who is the individual that actually offered that to you, that actually hired you and pulled you on board of all those people you worked with?
A music library. So a music library that I write for brought it to me. They were like, hey, just kind of like how you did with the the other, like the commercial thing you did, the Syndicate did, or Outback, any of those, right? It's like that. Those were, I believe, those were libraries that got the jobs, and so that was kind of the deal. Is the library got it because they have the reputation with a certain music supervisor that was working on the spot.
Gotcha. But instead of just the library communicating with you, they sort of opened up all channels and said, we're giving you the opportunity, but we're also going to have the supervisor, the director, and everybody else involved in this particular project also talk to Trevor. So we're all kind of communicating. That's sort of what they did.
No, it kind of happened chronologically, where everybody that contacted the next person just stayed on. So like the director contacted the music supervisor. Now that's 2 people in the kitchen. And then the supervisor contacted the library. Now that's 3 people in the kitchen. Nobody ever left the kitchen. So then I got in, and now everybody's in the kitchen. It was kind of more like that.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that could be, I always wonder about that, because when we do our custom queues through Library X, they basically, we don't talk to the director or the ad agency or anybody. And I kind of like that, because it's like, I don't want to get like you've been dealing with 4 different emails, 3 different perspectives, who am I supposed to be, whatever, because the ad agency, the supervisor, and the library might have 3 different opinions about what's going to work. But I love that ours is just streamlined. We get one email, which is like, yes, we like that. No, we don't like this. And so they make that sort of initial judgment, and then they send it off to their agent or their client, whoever that happens to be. So sometimes streaming that communication is great. But in this situation, obviously, it's just sort of happened to not work out that clean. It was just kind of people were, and sometimes what are you going to do? You guys got to communicate. Everybody's got to communicate. And so it just sort of opened up multiple channels of communication, which can be messy, obviously, as you saw. And that's definitely one of those things, though, where you figured out, you were like, okay, who really has the power in this situation? Why I asked about who hired you and who actually is going to pay you is because typically that's the person who really matters, right? Like they're putting money in your pocket. They signed a contract with you. You can legally be held liable with them. Their opinion matters. So if you don't please them, there's problems, right? You can get fired. You can get taken off the gig. You can not get paid. There's a lot of things that can happen if that one person who is actually taking money out of their business checking account and paying you, or writing up a contract and signing it with you, if they're not being happy, then that's really who's going to say yes or no ultimately to it. But sometimes the person who has the money says, hey, music supervisor, that's the person you need to listen to. I don't really know much about the music, but I trust their ears. So make them happy. You make them happy, you make me happy, and then we all can get through this gig, in a clear way. So sometimes I've found just going to the person, like if there are multiple streams of like, okay, they want this, they want that, And this actually goes beyond music. I mean, even when I had day jobs as a video editor, getting notes from like the executive producer and then the field producer and then the host. And like I had all these people. At the end of the day, it was like, who's going to make sure I keep a job? It was the executive producer. So whatever their ideas were, I'm like, exactly what you said. You don't want to say like, you know what, I don't really care about your opinion because you're not paying my check. Like, no, you don't want to make enemies with people. It's always, you always want to be agreeable. So you always want to say, oh, cool, interesting. Let's get your notes down. Let me write those down. I got to run this stuff by the executive producer, but as long as he's cool with it and it all works out, we can definitely do this. So you definitely don't want to be like, hey, shut up, don't care about your opinion, you're not paying my checks. Obviously, like Trevor says, it's smart to keep friends in this business. So the music supervisor and everybody who's working with, you don't want to just shut them down and go like, I don't really care about your opinion. You want to say, oh, interesting. And just like how he said, it was like, hey, let me do what the director wants. And as we're waiting for him to review that, I'll definitely go through your ideas. So, I mean, that is more work for him, but he's doing that also to sort of nurture the relationship. So, you know, it takes some thoughtfulness, I think, to do that. I'm trying to remember. I had one situation that was sort of like that. I had I'd been hired to produce a song for American Career College a couple years back, I think 2014 or 2015, and out of the blue got a phone call. It was a pretty decent budget, and they wanted me to basically produce some lyrics for a track that they had already created. And the guy that hired me, before he told me, well, as he was telling me about the gig, he hadn't mentioned that he had this friend of his that he wanted to help write the lyrics. He just was talking to me about the gig and just saying, hey, you know, I think you'd be great. I've heard your music and awesome. And they definitely want this kind of younger appeal. And I think you're the perfect producer for it. So they hired me, but he wasn't the guy signing the checks. He was sort of an associate of the actual production company signing the checks. The production company signs me. They get me under contract. They pay me their first, I think they paid me in 3 installments. They pay me the first installment. They say, great, go ahead. Let's get started with those lyrics. So I start writing him. I get called from the first guy who really kind of brought me into the gig and said, hey, I want you to use essentially this girl that's a friend of mine to help you write the lyrics. Meaning he wants her to get a big chunk of the money that I was going to get for the gig. And I said, you know, I appreciate the offer, but I was also brought on board because you guys liked the lyrics that you've seen of mine. You've liked the music that I've done. So I think I've been brought on board for my talent. So it was one of those interesting things where I really was brought on board because this guy kind of, I mean, probably they liked my talent, but also because this guy really wanted to get his friend like some work. So he realized like, well, he's the producer. She can be the lyricist. Let me bring her on board. So it was kind of awkward because I was like, I don't need a lyricist. So I had that sort of dilemma of like, if I let her become a part of this gig, I make this guy happy, but maybe the lyrics won't be so great. I checked out some of her work. I didn't think her lyrics were amazing. They weren't terrible, but I didn't think like, wow, that's more than I could do. I knew that I could write lyrics. I knew that I had that ability to do it. So I just told him like, you know what, I appreciate the offer, but like, I've got brought on board for my skills and talents. I think I can do this, man. I don't think I need to bring somebody else in. If it's something I can't do, I always bring somebody in. I'm like, if I can't, sing, obviously I did go ahead and bring in an actual vocalist to sing the lyrics that I wrote. But I typically don't want to bring somebody on just because. So it was definitely a political situation. I had to sort of weigh that consequence. Did I make the right choice? I don't know. We'll see, I guess. I have maintained good relationship with the actual production company, which was aside from him. He wasn't really associated with them. So they brought me on board for a couple of gigs afterwards, smaller ones, but like they've definitely brought me on board. So I don't know. It didn't really hurt me to actually just kind of stand my ground and say, not really. But this stuff definitely happens where people will want to bring you on board with things and bring people that they want on board and have their 2 cents with it. And sometimes I noticed, especially with that opportunity, the production company, the guy really did want to produce some of the lyrics because some of the lyrics I had worked fine, but he was like, well, I think it'd be cool if we did this. And of course, like, even if I disagreed, I was like, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Like, what do I have to gain by like fighting him and going, no, we must use all of my lyrics. Like, this guy was doing some of my work for me because he wanted to, like, he wanted to be a creative person. And Trevor, you've probably seen that, people who want to be like, oh, I want to be a member of the music production team here, even though they have no musical training or anything like that, but they just want to put their 2 cents in. You know, you got to really pick those battles wisely. Most of the time, what's the point of fighting them on like, hey, can you have that bell do this? Like, okay, maybe if you don't like it, if this person's signing your checks, you don't have a gig without them. So you really got to be smart about saying no or yes to certain notes that you get. Anyway, so that was some of my experience with that. Do you have anything else to add on that?
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's interesting you brought that. So the the people trying to like input like kind of do your job a little bit for you. That was like the whole time. There was a lot of that. And that's been my experience 100% of the time. Any custom thing I've ever done, anybody who is involved tries to input their musical opinion. You know, oh, this sounds it should be like this, or you know, it needs to build a little more, or whatever, right? Like and maybe they're good, maybe they're bad opinions. The point is that they almost always do it, and it's one of those things that it's another judgment call of being like, do I do it and please the person who, you know, their position is kind of superseding your creativity in a way, you know, like they're basically, their position is almost more important than what you're writing some of the times, because you're stuck going, okay, I need to please them because I want them to come back to me again. I want to get this job from this person again when they do another thing, you know, which is essentially always the thought that was going through my mind, which is why I was like, all right, I'm going to please you, then I'm going to please all of you. But I did create a little bit of a hierarchy, but still, you know, I want to please everybody, because like, although this is a nightmare, like I've had situations where 1-2 things are a nightmare, and then the biggest thing of my career happens later because I dealt with the nightmares before, you know. And one of the things I have noticed, which I thought of when you were talking, is I have witnessed something, and it's something that I would advise your students to kind of pay attention if they start getting into bigger productions and custom stuff. I worked on a project. I guess I can talk about it now, for Disney a while ago, a couple years ago now. And the people involved, like the different execs and other people involved, they started putting their writer credentials when they would register the songs for like different versions, like not the full version, like the full song was them, but if they did like a 60-second cut down, they put themselves on as the writer. And that was actually I learned that this is a very common trick that some of the and it was like random people, and it was like the video editor would throw himself on there, or like and not all of these examples that I'm thinking of are all the one client or Disney. I've seen it all over the place. So it's not just one. You know, this is kind of a common thing that I've noticed is or if they'll make a little bumper, you know, like where it comes out of the commercial or into the commercial. If you didn't make it, they might cut it and then add themselves as like on that version as a writer.
Wow.
And if you fight them, like they know that they're big names, right? I'm putting out names here now, but like they're Pepsi or they're Disney or they're, you know, Sony or whatever. They know, like, if you fight with them, then you're probably they're just gonna be like, okay, he wasn't, you know, he fought on this, so we're not going to use them again. And that's kind of,
and they can keep getting away with that because the next guy will just start working with them.
The next guy will do it. And that was kind of this, like, it was kind of a sad realization, but also just kind of like the thing made a lot of money in royalties. So like, as much as I want to complain, it was still like really nice. So,
man.
You know, but it is, you know, morally, it's like, you know, your job was to make that cut down, you know. You're not actually writing anything. And so I've seen that a few times, and it's in custom stuff that I've noticed.
Super frustrating, man. Yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, when you find that kind of stuff out, you're just like, geez, like, you know, these just, you know, soulless people that just think they can just do that kind of stuff. And again, it reminds me of this video I made like last year where I was like, you know, kind of forget what you think is fair, because kind of what Trevor was saying is like, yeah, it sucks. Like, I'd like us to live in a world where that's impossible to do, where people have to be honest and they have to like not put their names on the writer's credit, and they can't do that. But it happens. And just like he said, like if you raise a stink with them and go, hey, you guys are kind of cutting into my writers, they go, oh, no problem, we'll take care of that. Meaning they X your email out of their system and they never talk to you again. They took care of it, right? Yeah. So, but again, it's like one of those things where life's not fair. Sometimes life sucks. And it's like one of those just big life lessons where you have to be like, okay, this is just the way it is. There's corruption, there's fraud, there's dishonesty. I mean, we are human beings. We're living on planet Earth. This is not new. You know, it's not breaking news. Okay. This stuff has been happening for a long time. So my mindset of how I deal with it is I just automatically assume that there's going to be dishonesty and corruption and problems and missing royalty. And I know I've missed out on tens of thousands, probably of dollars of royalties. What am I going to do about it? There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much that I can dedicate my time and effort to. What do I love doing? I love creating music. That's really where it comes down to. Of all the stuff that I'm doing here with the syndicate, with licensing and everything, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, learning about that new plugin that Greg was showing us with the guitar tracks and just like cranking out this awesome electro rock track. I'm like, damn, it just like excited me again about making music. That's what I'm doing this for. That's what I love, just to keep getting into my studio every day to do. So that's where I'm keeping my focus, right? So yes, I'm going to crank out tons and tons of songs, and some of them are going to like not get paid anything. Some of them I'm going to get my royalties stolen from me. Some of them, you know, this just stuff is going to happen. You do your best. You try to keep on top of your catalog. You try to keep on top of working with, you know, legit people. You try to catch this stuff, double checking registrations, all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, you just have to just keep like, you become like a bulldozer basically, where it's like, you know, like I see these little issues like, okay, like with Trevor, somebody took some of his royalties. It's like a little stick that popped up in his path of like, ah, that sucks. Like if he didn't have any willpower, like something like that could totally demotivate him. He wouldn't want to keep working, and you just kind of like, this industry sucks. It's all a bunch of BS. But rather it's like, have a mindset of like, I'll just create like, I'm going to become a bulldozer. I'm going to become like a wrecking ball, and a little stick that pops up like that I lose some money, I don't get the royalties, I just knock that thing over and just keep going, because I have this massive catalog. I have massive opportunities. I'm working with good people, and I'm building up my sort of passive income stream for the long run. I think that's the only productive way to think about this stuff. I don't know. What do you think, man?
Yeah, no, so that was gonna be my final thought about this, is that I don't want people to feel like I'm like complaining or like shedding a shadow over the industry of like, oh, it's really bad or whatever. With all of that, I still have a really good feeling about everything that I did. That project, the projects I've done in the past that I've noticed kind of issues with, they're all just kind of just brush them off and keep going. I'm living in a world where I get to make music for a living. I don't have to go plow a farm. I don't have to go do all this. I get to make music for a living. If a few of those sticks get in the way, like, fine, you know, I can't get caught up on them, or else I'm just gonna get stuck on things like that. Like, it was frustrating, like this last one when I was talking about, it was frustrating. There was some kind of, you know, I want to like spend a little bit of time with my family right now, but I got to step away because they need it now, you know, that kind of stuff. But you just get over it, you know. It's not like super horrible. It's just they're just little things that you just kind of, like you said, you just kind of bulldozer over, and then look at the big picture. You know, the big picture is I did cool commercial spots for a pretty big brand name, got paid a good amount, liked the music. At the end of it all, I still liked most of the music anyway, and I'll probably get to do it again because I dealt with some of the heartache throughout it, and I'll get to do it again. And if I get too caught up on that, like if I get too caught up on the little things and stuff, then I probably won't get to do it again. And then I just, what am I doing then? And that's kind of like, I don't want it to seem like it's all doom and gloom. It's actually not. It's the opposite. There are little hiccups, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And once you get it done, you get that just satisfaction of getting the job done. I mean, that is a huge part of it, of like just going, I went through the beginning, I created a track that they wanted. We went through a whole bunch of revisions, but I pushed through until I got everybody to say thumbs up, cool, we're good to go. And it's just, you get that sense of accomplishment, which energizes you actually moving forward. So that's just a human being thing that we love to, you know, finish a job. And that's one of the main reasons why I think you should never be like half finishing tracks. Like, even if you start a track and you're not so excited about it, even for a library or whatever, just finish the damn thing. Because if you get into a habit of just half finishing jobs, you're going to get fatigued. It's just the long-term effect of that is that you start to burn out and not feel like you're going anywhere. Because it's literally like getting on a treadmill for just a couple of minutes and then not really breaking a sweat. Like, how satisfying is that if you're trying to really get into shape? It's not. You're just never going to get that sort of endorphin rush that you need. You got to see your tracks and your projects and your gigs all the way through. You're going to see it. And like Trevor said, I mean, if you're not having fun with this, you're doing something wrong. So yeah, it doesn't mean that every single day and every single project is going to be just like, you know, roses and sunshine.
Having a blast.
Yeah, there's going to be challenges. But again, like that's the part of life that's like, I think human beings have to be under like pressured in order to like exist. I don't think that if we lived in a world where there was no challenges and no headaches and no, you know, problems that we had to overcome or obstacles to overcome, I just don't think we'd be as happy. Actually, I do think that's like a yin yang relationship. We have to have the pressure. We have to have the deadlines. We have to have this sort of, oh God, how do I deal with all this, to eventually get to that, I got through it all. Like, we have to have all of that pressure put on us in order to succeed in order to get to the other side. So I would say don't, run away from these kind of pressuring situations or difficult situations, but just embrace them, and also think about like, what can I learn from all this? And that's why I wanted to really have this chat with Trevor, is just to talk about like what some of the sort of things is he going to learn moving forward. Obviously we covered all that kind of stuff. And just sort of making you guys aware here in the syndicate of what is the reality. And this is, again, we're talking really about custom gigs here. This is not necessarily always, or even really, it's rarely ever like this for libraries.
Yeah.
Most of the time you got one guy that's saying, hey, we like it, or nah, change this. And that's pretty much all you're going to be dealing with. But yeah, like Trevor said, with custom gigs, especially for national or international spots, good Lord. I mean, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of money at stake. There's a lot of things on the line. And so you got to be very delicate and sensitive to that as you're going through with these gigs, man. So, well, thank you, Trevor, for your attention and your feedback on all this kind of stuff, and your just insight on how it all worked out for you.
Yeah, thanks. I like talking about it. So
absolutely, man. Well, if you guys have any further questions, post them below on this post, and Trevor or I will try to respond to them. But this is really good stuff to be aware of now, especially if you guys are brand new in the business and you're just getting in. I'm telling you, Trevor, nobody really probably warned Trevor about this. Certainly nobody warned me really about this kind of stuff. So this is this is gonna be like career-saving advice for you guys to just be aware of this stuff. Like the first step to being aware of a problem is just naming it, knowing that it's there. And these kind of issues definitely will arise in your career, as Trevor was saying. So you guys got to know about this stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching, and comment if you have any questions below.